The Standards of Practice Handbook provides guidance, A, regarding the penalties incurred as a result of ethical violations. Now, we're specifically asking about the Standards of Practice Handbook. So, some citations from the reading. Let's start, this first part explains why the answer is B. The CFA Institute Board of Governors maintains oversight and responsibility for the Professional Conduct Program, which in conjunction with the Disciplinary Review Committee is responsible for enforcement of the code and standards. So it does not provide guidance regarding the penalties incurred. That is explained down here. B, to which all CFA Institute members and candidates must adhere. Read the first sentence. All CFA Institute members and candidates enrolled in the CFA program are required to comply with the code and standards. Code and standards, or the Standards of Practice Handbook, provides guidance to which all members must adhere. Correct. Let's get rid of C. Provides guidance through explanatory material and examples intended to be all-inclusive. Extreme wording, right? Whenever you see extreme wording, always be suspicious. Here is the citation from the reading. Because factual circumstances vary so widely and often involve gray areas, the explanatory material and examples are not intended to be all-inclusive. Which of the following statements best describes an aspect of the Professional Conduct Program process? A, inquiries are not initiated in response to information provided by the media. And a reference from the reading here, CFA Institute staff may become aware of questionable conduct by a member or candidate through the media, specifically saying it, regulatory notices, or another public source. So it can't be A, because it's saying here that it is not. B, investigations result in disciplinary review committee panels for each case. And we will read down here why it is not B, but let's go to C first. Investigations may include requesting a written explanation from the member or candidate. When an inquiry is initiated, the professional conduct staff conducts an investigation that may include requesting a written explanation from the member or candidate. So C is correct. Let's see why B is not. Upon reviewing the material obtained during the investigation, the professional conduct staff may conclude the inquiry with no disciplinary sanction. So it doesn't result in a review committee panel for each case. No disciplinary sanction, issue a cautionary letter, or continue proceedings to discipline the member or candidate. So this is clearly wrong. It's not for each case, only those cases where they think, okay, we got to go further. A current code of ethics principle reads in full, promote the integrity. And so what I did was I took the reference from the reading where it starts with promote the integrity and viability of the global capital markets for the ultimate benefit of society. That matches up with C. I don't particularly like this question because it is asking a question about the 11th edition versus previous editions. You know, what's new here that you didn't see before? And if this is the first time you've been through the program, you're only seeing this edition. What are we going to do? A history lesson of every edition that's ever been and know all the differences in the evolution of the code and standards through time? I don't like this question. It has nothing to do really with what the learning objective should be. But here we are. As stated in the revised 11th edition, the Standards of Professional Conduct A require supervisors to focus on the detection and prevention of violations. Well, that was the old wording, and I'll read it to you. Members and candidates must make reasonable efforts to detect and prevent violations of applicable laws, rules, regulations, and the code and standards by anyone subject to their supervision or authority. So you're looking around you and you're trying to prevent or detect these violations. The new wording is a little bit different. You must make reasonable efforts to ensure that anyone subject to their supervision or authority complies with applicable laws, rules, and regulations. So you're going from being a detective to being a mentor, saying, hey, the best I can do is make sure that you're aware of what the code and standards are. Now you're going to go ahead and violate whether I can detect it or not. So I should not be responsible for detecting something that you're intentionally going to try to hide from me. I should be responsible for just educating you about it. So the new wording, slightly different. I don't think that that's such a testable thing. I would never have asked a question like this. B, adopt separate ethical considerations for programs such as CIPM and investment foundations. And if we look down here, since the standard was developed, CFA Institute has launched additional educational programs. The updated standard not only maintains the integrity of the CFA program, but also expands the same ethical considerations when members or candidates participate in such programs as the CIPM program and the CFA Institute Investment Foundation Certificate. So you don't have to adopt separate ethical considerations. We can get rid of that one. Must be C, address the risks and limitations of recommendations being made to clients. And this is an additional requirement under the standard for communication with clients and prospective clients. Along with everything else they list, they add this as well. Disclose to clients and prospective clients significant limitations and risks associated with the investment process. There we go. According to the Code of Ethics, members of CFA Institute and candidates for the CFA designation must, and we have A, B, C. These little bullet points over here, these are references I took straight from the reading. So let's see what we have. Maintain their professional competence to exercise independent professional judgment. And this is mixing two things. You don't need to maintain professional competence in order to exercise independent professional judgment. The actual quote here is maintain and improve their professional competence and strive to maintain and improve the competence of other investment professionals. So you'll notice a theme in all of the statements being made, that it is not just a matter of you being your own keeper. Maintain and improve your professional competence, but also encourage others to do the same thing. And we're going to see that we have the same thing down here in C. So A is wrong. You're not maintaining your professional competence in order to exercise independent professional judgment. That is a separate statement altogether. B, place the integrity of the investment profession and the interests of clients above their own personal interests. That's exactly what the quote is. Place the integrity of the investment profession and the interests of clients above their own personal interests. So there's your answer. C, practice in a professional and ethical manner with the public, clients, and others in the global capital markets. Notice that it is just referring to the individuals. You practice in a professional and ethical manner. Whereas the proper statement is practice and encourage others to practice in a professional and ethical manner that will reflect credit on themselves and the profession. So whenever we see a statement that really is just saying something, you must do this, and there's another statement that says you must do this and encourage others to do the same, always select the one that is more inclusive of everyone around you, that your responsibility is not only just to yourself anymore, but your responsibility is to yourself and to encourage others to have that same responsibility. Which of the following statements best describes an aspect of the standards of professional conduct? Members and candidates are required to, and I did cross out the words here to make the statement correct, but we'll read them with the original words, are required to ensure any portfolio mandate followed is fair, accurate, and complete. When we talk about fair, accurate, and complete, that is the presentation of results. So to make this statement correct, it should read, ensure any portfolio performance presented is fair, accurate, and complete, not that any mandate followed is fair, accurate, and complete. That's a wrong statement. Let's go to C and eliminate that because that's a wrong statement. Well, have a reasonable and adequate basis for decisions about client confidentiality. You don't need a reasonable and adequate basis for decisions about that. The reasonable and adequate basis is for recommendations. You must have a reasonable and adequate basis for any recommendation you make, but client confidentiality doesn't require you to make any subjective decision about, well, do I have a reasonable basis to keep this confidential? There are only a few instances in which you can breach that idea of confidentiality. Members and candidates must keep information about current, former, and prospective clients confidential. That's a period. Unless the information concerns illegal activities, disclosure is required by law, or the client or prospective client permits disclosure. So C is wrong. B, promptly disclose changes that might materially affect investment processes. And here is the statement from the reading. Disclose to clients and prospective clients the basic format and general principles of the investment processes they use to analyze investments, select securities, and construct portfolios. And must promptly disclose any changes that might materially affect those processes. All right, so with this question, we really have to pay attention to the structure of the question. So we need to parse the grammar a little bit here. Which of the following responses most completely represents an ethical principle, a single ethical principle? It's not saying which most represents some ethical principles. It's a singular and most completely represents an ethical principle of CFA Institute as outlined in the Standards of Practice Handbook. A, individual professionalism. That is standard 1. That's exactly what it's referred to. B, responsibilities to clients and employers. Well, responsibility to the clients is standard 3. Responsibility to employers is standard 4. We're looking for an ethical principle, singular. This is 2 of them, so we can get rid of that. Ethics involved in investment analysis and recommendations. Well, this is 5. It doesn't have this. Most completely represents an ethical principle. So we can get rid of that. This is 2, not singular. This doesn't have any extra words, and it is singular. It is A. Don't think I like questions like that, because I first of all had to, it's more of a test of the grammar of the question itself. I first have to say, okay, well, let me follow the grammar of the question itself. I think I could have, if I'm testing you on your knowledge of the different standards, I think I could have done it in a better way that actually tested your knowledge of the standards, not your ability. And if English isn't your first language, then some of this might have been confusing, because you would have said, well, I know that these are standards. I know that this is a standard. I know this is a standard. Which would it be? Without parsing the grammar, well, you would have been guessing, because they all look reasonable, and they are reasonable, but we're looking for complete and singular. Don't like that question. A CFA Institute member would violate the standard for material non-public information by, we have A, B, C. Here's integrity of capital markets, A and B. A is material non-public information, B is market manipulation. A is conducting price distortion practices, and we're really concerned with only material non-public information here. You'd violate this standard by A, conducting price distortion. Price distortion is over here under market manipulation, not under material non-public information. This is asking for material non-public information only. Got to get rid of A. B, inappropriately causing others to act. And here it is right here. Members and candidates who possess material non-public information that could affect the value of an investment must not act or cause others to act on the information. And C, inadequately maintaining investment records. This falls under standard 5C, called record retention. Has nothing to do with material non-public information. Get rid of that. There we go. According to the duties to clients standard, suitability requires members and candidates in an advisory relationship with a client to A, place their client's interests before their own interests. Well, that is under duties to clients, but it's not suitability. It's under loyalty, prudence, and care. B, consider investments in the context of the client's total portfolio. And under suitability, you will find this statement: judge the suitability of investments in the context of the client's total portfolio. There we go. And C, not knowingly make misrepresentations related to recommendations. That is the professionalism standard, section C, misrepresentation. B is your answer. As part of the duties to clients standard, members and candidates must, and I crossed out a word here, but we'll read it with the word, and then what I've written in after is to make it a correct statement. Members and candidates must document client financial constraints after an initial investment action. No, you must know the client's constraints prior to an initial investment action. Otherwise, how do you know if it's suitable, right? Get rid of that one. B, maintain an equal balance of interests owed to their clients and employers. No, clients' interests come before the employer's interests. The standard, loyalty, prudence, and care. Members and candidates have a duty of loyalty to their clients and must act with reasonable care and exercise prudent judgment. Members and candidates must act for the benefit of their clients and place their clients' interests before their employers and their own. So the client is before the employer and before the member or candidate. So it's not an equal balance. B is wrong. C, deal fairly and objectively with all clients when engaging in professional activities. And that is exactly the wording for fair dealing, which is in the standard duties to clients. The duties to employer standards states that members and candidates must not A, accept any gifts that might compromise their independence and objectivity. That sounds reasonable, right? But the compromise independence and objectivity, this is standard 1, part B. You'll find that under independence and objectivity. For duties to employers, here is the standard for additional compensation arrangements. Members and candidates must not accept gifts, benefits, compensation, or consideration that competes with or might reasonably be expected to create a conflict of interest with their employer's interest unless they obtain written consent from all parties involved. Notice it does not say compromise their independence and objectivity. For gifts that would do this, you will find it in this standard. B, deprive their employer of their skill and abilities as related to their employment. And under duties to employer, A, loyalty, you'll find it there. In matters related to their employment, members and candidates must act for the benefit of their employer and not deprive their employer of the advantage of their skills and abilities, divulge confidential information, or otherwise cause harm to their employer. Our answer is B. Let's get rid of C, which I think is poorly written and doesn't make any sense to me. But we'll read it as a statement. The duties to employer standard states that members and candidates must not accept compensation competing with their employer's interests, so far so good, and with the written consent of all parties involved. It's saying, if we look up here, unless they obtain written consent from all parties involved. That is A. So the first part of the sentence matches what this matches, and I think this is supposed to be must not accept compensation without the written consent of all parties involved. It just seems like the author of this question said, well, I got A and B, but I need a third option. I need a third option, and couldn't come up with a third option. Said, I know what I'll do. I'll just play around with the words here and make it look like this should be included even though they're not taking it, that you have to get the consent not to accept compensation. I don't know. If you ask me, this is just bad writing. So if you read C and you thought, wait a minute, I don't get what it's trying to say, you're not alone. I had to look at it a while myself and say, okay, well, I know it's a wrong statement. How did you make it wrong? And I think it's if I cross out the word and put without, okay, that corrects it. But come on, that's a test of words. It's not a test of my knowledge of this material. I think you'll find a lot of this, especially in ethics, because ethics questions, they're hard to write short without there being the possibility of multiple answers. They're very difficult to write. So we got to just take it for what it is. The Investment Analysis, Recommendations, and Action Standard states that members and candidates must find an investment suitable for their client before making a recommendation. You might recognize that and say, yeah, I remember that. But it must be in this standard. This is under duties to clients, Part C, suitability. B, make reasonable efforts to ensure that performance presentation is fair, accurate, and complete, which is one of the requirements under the code and standards. However, it is not in investment analysis, recommendations, and actions. It's under duties to clients, performance presentation, which means I got to take C. Distinguish between fact and opinion in the presentation of investment analysis and recommendations. And here is the statement under B. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 4, distinguish between fact and opinion in the presentation of investment analysis and recommendations. Exactly the same wording. Based on the conflicts of interest standard, members and candidates must, and we have to stay within the bounds of the conflicts of interest standard, must disclose as required by law. Well, right away you should say, well, no, none of these are required by law. These are ethical standards, not legal standards, ethical standards. We could just get rid of that right away. Disclose, as required by law. Those conflicts interfering with their professional duties. And under this standard, that is not what it says. It doesn't say interfering with their professional duties. It does say members and candidates must make full and fair disclosure of all matters that could reasonably be expected to impair their independence and objectivity or interfere with respective duties to their clients, prospective clients, and employers. B, disclose, as appropriate, any benefit paid to others for the recommendation of products. And under conflicts of interest, Section C, referral fees, it says members and candidates must disclose to their employer, clients, and prospective clients, as appropriate, any compensation, consideration, or benefit received from or paid to others for the recommendation of products or services. B is your answer. C, seek employer approval before prioritizing their investment transactions over those, look at that, of clients. There's still more bad writing. Well, no, under this standard, there is no room for allowing you to prioritize yourself over the client. Here's priority of transactions. Investment transactions for clients and employers must have priority over investment transactions in which a member or candidate is the beneficial owner, period. It doesn't say unless prior approval is obtained. That's just it, period. They have priority. That's the end of the story. The responsibilities as a CFA Institute member or CFA candidate standard explicitly states a requirement regarding. Here is the standard. It has Part A and Part B, conduct as participants in the program, and reference to the CFA designation, the CFA program. Loyalty? No, that's not one of the two. Responsibilities of supervisors? That's not one of the two. Reference to the CFA program? There it is right there. Reference to the CFA program.